From the Chesapeake Bay Journal, your source for independent environmental reporting, this is Chesapeake Uncharted, the podcast that uncovers stories about the Bay, its interconnected ecosystem, and the people who rely on them. I'm Jeremy Cox. On today's episode,
for me, being a scientist means working outside some days, and other days it means sitting in front of a computer. I'm still a scientist. Other days it might mean me wearing, gold hoops and my hair out and curly, and other days my hair might be in braids, or some days I might be swimming. You can be a scientist no matter what you look like or where you come from.
Environmental education is a broad term, encompassing teachers in K-12 schools, consultants to businesses, employees of environmental nonprofits, university professors, media relations professionals, workers at government agencies, and naturalists spreading the story of stewardship. If environmental education sounds like something extra, a nicety if society can afford it, perhaps you should think again. Research suggests that students who receive high-quality, long-term environmental education display higher than average levels of environmental literacy. But environmental education is at a crossroads. An increased emphasis on testing has forced many schools to cut back on or even eliminate environmental instruction, and funding from both the public and private sectors toward environmental education remains a tiny fraction of overall environmental spending. In the Chesapeake Bay region, there are signs that it's trending in the wrong direction. In a 2014 agreement, all participating Bay states and the District of Columbia agreed to develop a comprehensive approach toward environmental literacy for all students. A 2022 survey found that just 17% of participating education agencies considered themselves well prepared to implement such an education plan. That was down 3 percentage points from the program's 2019 survey. It was the first decline in that measure in the survey's history. So let's spend some time with education. Welcome to Season 3 of Chesapeake Uncharted. This time, our team here at the Bay Journal is interested in hearing from a younger generation of Bay leaders, the people who weren't born when the Chesapeake Bay cleanup formally began 40 years ago. With the Bay restoration effort facing its current set of cleanup goals in 2025, this felt like a good time to go searching for some inspiration. Each episode spotlights one of these wave makers. Today, our guest is Symone Barkley, environmental educator and advocate for greater diversity in environmental fields, especially marine science. She is a communications specialist with the National Oceanic and Atmospheric Administration, based in her hometown of Baltimore. Her job is to basically encourage people young and old to learn more about the environment. We have a lot to talk about, starting right after this quick break.
This is Laura Lutz, editor at the Chesapeake Bay Journal. I hope you're enjoying our podcast, and I'd like to invite you to join the community of Bay Journal readers. If you care about climate change, wildlife, clean air, healthy communities, and of course the Bay and its rivers, you'll find news you can use at the Bay Journal, along with some great ideas for outdoor travel. Our subscriptions are free. Check us out at bayjournal.com and click on subscribe to start receiving the best independent environmental news in the Bay region.
Hello again. On today's episode of Chesapeake Uncharted, we're talking with Symone Barkley. A brief biographical sketch of Symone. She has a bachelor's degree in marine and environmental science from Virginia's Hampton University and a master's in natural resources from Delaware State University. She was a recipient of the North American Association for Environmental Education's 30 Under 30 Award, which recognizes young leaders in the field worldwide. And she's a fellow traveler in the podcast world, hosting a podcast series for NOAA. On the advocacy side, she is the Chief Learning Officer for a nonprofit called Black in Marine Science, which seeks to amplify Black voices and encourage a new generation to embrace the field. Our conversation ranged from the current challenges facing environmental education to her hands-on work translating science to a lay audience. Here we go. Well, Symone Barkley, thank you so much for joining us today.
Thank you, Jeremy, for having me. I really appreciate it and excited to be here.
It's always exciting to talk to a true Baltimore native, right? You grew up there, you live there now. What is it that you love about Baltimore?
When I left Baltimore and went to school for undergrad in Virginia, and then I went to graduate school in Delaware, and after grad school, I'm like, what am I going to do next? And what brought me back to Baltimore is being able to merge my passion of marine science and, again, the natural world and environmental science with education, with talking with people who are from the same place that I'm from, with, getting them excited about what lives in their communities, what lives in their neighborhood, things that they might not usually see, things that they might miss because they aren't looking for it. And that's why I wanted to come back home.
You mentioned you have a passion for marine science. That's evident. Where do you think that comes from?
When I was younger, growing up here in Baltimore, we have the Pataskala River, which is not an ocean, but of course, gives me my connection to water. It gave me my first connection to water, and honestly, my connection to just being outside. I would remember going to the park and Middle Branch Park, to be specific, and seeing the river there and wanting to know more about it, but not necessarily knowing who to ask or where to go. And that is what kind of ignited, my passion to learn more about it. And so once I was able to become a volunteer at the aquarium, that was the first thing that I did. And once I started that program at the aquarium, I remember getting this really large binder that included facts about every exhibit that they had at the aquarium. This was a long time ago, so the exhibits, some of them were the same, but some of them were different than they are now. But I had to learn about every exhibit, and because I was stationed on the floor, and when people come through, when guests come through the building, they would be asking me questions, and I was expected to know the answers, and so I had to learn about every exhibit, and it was so fun to me. It was a huge binder, and it probably could have been intimidating, but I was ecstatic about it, and I still have the binder, and I've seen notes that I took in the binder. That solidified my desire to pursue marine science as a career. Once I finished that program as a summer volunteer, I knew I was going to go to college and study marine science. And so that's what I did.
Now, working at the National Aquarium there, which of course is right there on Baltimore Harbor, I'm wondering, working with young people in that kind of a fun environment, how much education do you feel like they had? How much did they know, do you feel like, about the environment, or do you feel like you had to really start from scratch there?
Kids always know more than you think. That's something that I feel like people underestimate kids so often, and kids know so much. It's just about how we talk about it with them. Asking the right questions. That's a major point. When I was at the aquarium, and we did a program called What Lives in the Harbor, which was literally about what lives in the harbor. The kids came down and they got to discover different species that live in the harbor by us pulling up these habitat cages that had oyster shells in them. And then, of course, the oyster shells provide a safe haven for smaller creatures like mud crabs or mummy chog or the American eel or other kinds of smaller species that would go into these little habitat cages and it's kind of build their own habitat. And so when we would do this with them, the kids were so excited to see the things that live there, to touch a mud crab, to see an American eel, to see an eel. It was amazing for me. And so it was something that I think really helped the students to feel proud about their city, to feel like, hey, sometimes people think that like you have to go to another place for you to like encounter wildlife, or they might feel like there's not anything here, it looks dead, like the water looks like, it's brown and it looks like nothing lives in there, but you can see a lot, and there's so much that we impact in our daily lives. And I think that that's something that the kids were able to easily make the connection to, was like how do our actions impact these organisms, these animals that we've just seen?
What do you think of the state of environmental education in America today? Is it adequate?
No. I think that we have a long way to go. And environmental education is interesting, right? Because environmental education can include climate change, or it cannot, right? It depends on what you want to focus on. Environmental education can be focused on just talking to students about about planting trees and about the importance of having native species, or it could be lots of things like that, but it could be heavier topics as well. And so one thing that I think that we don't see a lot is that there are requirements to talk about these topics in curriculum across the country. I don't see that when I go to science teacher conferences like National Science Teaching Association. We have a lot of science teachers who want to talk more about the environment, but their state curriculum doesn't have a whole lot of it being included, or they are not allowed to talk about certain things. And so I definitely agree that our country has a long way to go on getting folks connected to the environment.
So what's the solution here to improving environmental education?
We have to give ourselves a little bit of flexibility and give students a little bit of flexibility. But education, I think we need to be encouraging teachers and school districts to incorporate more field experiences. We don't see that often. We don't see field trips often, especially at the high school level. There are not many field trips for students. And if they go on a field trip, it may be that like the senior class goes to like an amusement park or something for graduation. It's not that the students are going on meaningful field trips that are both fun but also enriching and educational. And that, I think, is where we should really start to shift our focus.
I did want to circle back to one thing. You said there's two limitations that science educators say they face, which is, one, they don't have time, which I totally get. That they have a lot to cover. But number two, you said that they feel like there's subjects they can't touch or that they're not allowed to talk about. You mind unpacking that for me?
Yeah, I mean, in some states, you maybe can't say global warming, but you can say climate change, right? So it's just, things get a little sticky. And recently, right, as we've been talking about environmental justice, sometimes it seems like that's a political topic. And I mean, I think it's to me, if we're talking about environmental education, environmental justice has to be included. It's not like an option. It has to be. And we can't skate around the conversations about communities being more impacted by air pollution or by heat or by any of these other factors due to them being pushed into certain areas or due to them having lower socioeconomic status. Like we have to talk about these things. And I think that because those conversations may seem heavy, those topics might feel like, it's going to bring up more questions from students. Some teachers shy away from it. What we end up seeing, though, is that when we do have these conversations with students, they recognize a lot more than what we think. And we are more worried about how they might perceive knowing that there might have been, actions that were taken intentionally to harm your community in the past or now even, but they are energized. This generation is very energized to stand up and to speak out and to make a difference. And so I don't really see us moving forward and making any, progress if we don't have these conversations with the students now.
Well, as I said, we're going to have a tough time fitting in all of your biography here, but we'll do our best. I was hoping you could expand a little bit about your participation in the North American Association for Environmental Education's 30 Under 30 program. Looks like a leadership program for people under 30 years old who are using environmental education to build a sustainable future for all. Was that something you had to apply to, or were you nominated by somebody else? What was this program?
Yeah, definitely. So I'll just say NAAE. That's what it's called.
Oh, well, now you tell me.
It's a little bit easier. So yes, I was nominated to be chosen as a NAAE 30 Under 30, and honestly, it was a goal of mine when I learned about the program, because, traditionally, again, my background was focused on research. So I wasn't at first, right, heavily involved in the environmental education community. But once I did my marine policy fellowship, and then once I went to National Aquarium and did the education programs there, I was knee deep in environmental education. And so while at the aquarium, that is where I learned about NAAE and wanted to see if I would be able to, try to get this award, this honor, this recognition. But it was a goal of mine to get a 30 Under 30 award, but I did the work that I did every day, and someone nominated me based on the work that I did. So I found out about it probably the year before I turned 30. It wasn't like I had been working on it, for years and years. I had, found out, and it was like, oh, it'd be cool to get that. And then a good friend of mine who worked with me at the aquarium, they nominated me.
As far as I can tell, it's like an elite, professional network. Only 241 individuals have ever won it, and as you said, they're from around the world, 47 different countries. What has it done for you, do you think?
So one of the things that I'm most proud of, I would say, is that after I was a recipient of the 30 Under 30, I was able to apply to a funding opportunity that they put out called Change Makers. And so this was open to 30 Under 30 recipients. And I applied to this Change Makers funding opportunity with the idea that I would create STEM kits that would be given to students in Baltimore City, and they would focus on including a STEM activity related to a book that either featured and or was authored by someone from an underrepresented background in science. And the activity was one, again, that I designed that paired with the book. And I included a video where I, kind of walk through the instructions of how to do said activity. And so the goal was to, encourage literacy with students, to increase their STEM identity, to help them feel like they are seen in media meaning, me on screen, but also in literature, in the books that they were reading about STEM related topics, and to give them opportunities to do hands-on learning with these STEM kits and with these activities. And this was launched in 2020, so right in COVID. So it's kind of really great timing, because students weren't going to school in the school building. And so lots of families and lots of teachers were looking for ways to engage students at home and for them to still, learn, STEM concepts. And so I was able to, put out these amazing kits. I put out 4 kits with the Changemakers funding. I did one on meteorology, one on astronomy, one on oceanography, and one on paleontology. And I would say that they were received very, very well.
So these kits are still available then?
I took a little bit of a break because I had a baby, but my kits are about to come back out, and I'm really excited. I have an event on May 11th where I'm going to in Baltimore, where I'm going to be sharing some kits and some activities with kids. And so I'm really excited to get back out there, and I've been getting requests, and I'm like, they're coming, it's coming. And I finally have a date for when things will be starting to open back up. So looking forward to this summer for sure.
You're the Chief Learning Officer for Black and Marine Science. This is a group that formed in 2020, started with a a tweet, a call to action. And you've mentioned the name a couple of times, but for those who are unaware, what is that group?
Yeah, so Black and Marine Science is a nonprofit. The organization focuses on aspiring the next generation of marine scientists to amplifying the work of marine scientists now. And so Black Marine Science does this through a few different avenues. We have our BIMS TV, which is our YouTube channel where we put out different types of content. We have a BIMS Bites episodes, which are like 5-minute bites of science where we talk about different marine science topics. And we have BIMS Bites Kids, which is the same thing, but a kid's version, a kid-friendly version for those members of our organization and for, anyone else who might be watching us on YouTube who might want to learn more about different issues or, again, different topics in marine science. And then we have BIMS Dives, which comes out quarterly. And so it's like a deep dive into larger issues about marine science. And so, for example, we talked about the Chesapeake Bay and Blacks on the Chesapeake with Vince Leggett. That's what came out in February. We have another one that'll be coming out later this year. We'll be talking about oysters. We have previous episodes where we have interviewed Dr. Mamie Parker, or we've interviewed Danny Washington, or Dr. Dawn Wright. So these are all Black people who have contributed to marine science. And I think that that's one of the priorities of Black marine science that I want to call out in the work to amplify, marine scientists. It's to say, that while we are underrepresented in this field, we are here. There are hundreds of members of Black and Marine Science. And like you mentioned, we are only, we were just formed in 2020, and there are over 300 members and from multiple countries around the world. And so I think that it's a statement to say that we exist, we want to be in this work, we want to stay in this work, we're going to support one another in this work, and we deserve to be here just like everyone else.
Well, you host a pair of podcasts for NOAA, right? And a couple of different themes between the two of them. What do you all try to do on those podcasts?
So I host the Planet NOAA podcast, and the goal is to just introduce listeners to the agency and to let them know how we approach different issues as a whole. So NOAA absolutely does have line offices that might focus on fisheries, or might focus on the ocean, or might focus on satellites. But there are many, issues and projects that the line offices work together to handle, or to do research on, or to, find solutions to. And so we have 4 segments in the Planet NOAA podcast. One is called Did You NOAA? And Did You NOAA is,
Sorry, I had to, that's a great, I'm a fan of puns.
Yes. And so Did You NOAA is, our trivia portion of our podcast, where you learn about, different ways that NOAA has contributed to history, and ways that you may not have known that NOAA might have been involved in different pop culture, activities or references. And then we also have the round table. So the round table is where we kind of have like a group discussion about a different topic. And then we do have another podcast that my office coordinates, and this is called the Ocean Podcast. And so the Ocean Podcast talks about different ocean topics, and that one again is pretty interesting as well. It's a little bit more focused than the Planet NOAA podcast, because Planet NOAA again is about the entire agency, but the Ocean Podcast is focused on ocean related issues and topics specifically.
I think I want to wind up with this question, which is, what do you say to young people, especially young people of color, who may want to pursue a path in marine science? What would your advice be to them?
Come on, y'all, we ready. Like this is probably the best time, because we are energized. Like, everyone's excited. Everyone is here to welcome you with open arms. We're here to give you all of the support you need. If that's, help with, if you are in middle school and you want to know how you can, learn more about marine science this summer, we can help you, with finding out about a camp. If you are in college and you want to get internships, right? Like, there are opportunities there. If you are grown and you want to make a career change, you've always been interested in marine science, but you weren't sure about how to do it, there are ways for you to dip your toe into this world and figure out if it's still for you, if you still are interested. And so I think this is the time, because I don't think we've ever seen this much momentum in making sure that people from typically excluded backgrounds are able to come into this field and to feel welcome and to feel that they have the resources and the skills that they need to thrive here.
Well, Symone, this has been wonderful. Thank you so much for talking to us today.
Thank you. It's been great. I really appreciate the time, and I'm excited to see what we do next to protect and restore Chesapeake Bay.
Chesapeake Uncharted is brought to you by the Bay Journal, your source for independent environmental news in the Chesapeake region. Production for this episode was by me, Jeremy Cox. The story was edited by Laura Lutz. Our marketing and advertising director is Jackie Kane. You can find more episodes of Chesapeake Uncharted on your favorite streaming service or at ChesapeakeUncharted.com. If you like what you're hearing, sign up for a free Bay Journal news subscription at BayJournal.com. Until next time, this has been Jeremy Cox. Take care.